What if I told you that the real reasons for Oscar Piastri's collapse in Brazil go far beyond a driving error? What if the real problem is inside McLaren, behind the scenes, in the shadows of a leak that should never have seen the light? Sunday dawned with a different atmosphere in Interlagos. Despite Saturday's incident, fourth place on the grid offered Oscar Piastri a tangible chance at redemption. The car had pace, the strategy was clear. Start with medium compounds, hold on until lap 20 and execute an aggressive undercut on the leaders. His engineer, Tom Stallard, gave him confidence. But there was tension. Not only because of the classification, but because in the hours before the race, the internal conversation at McLaren focused on one thing: minimal damage and a clean race. That seemingly harmless phrase resonated with suspicious ambiguity in Piastri's entourage, who interpreted it as a direct message not to take risks, at least not against his teammate Lando Norris. But that caution lasted exactly 6 laps. After the start and subsequent entry of the safety car due to an isolated accident, the race was relaunched. At that point, with cold tires and a narrow window to gain positions, Piastri spotted an opportunity. In front of him were Kimi Antonelli and Charles Leclerc, both defending aggressively. But Oscar, in an ambitious and surgically planned move, launched himself on the inside in turn 1, seeking to overtake both in a single maneuver. A triple overtake. A masterpiece or a catastrophic mistake? When braking, his left front tire locked slightly. Just a fraction of a second. That micro-error generated a slight slip that caused contact with Antonelli's Mercedes, pushing it against Leclerc's Ferrari. The damage was immediate. Charles's car lost its front suspension and was out of the race. Antonelli, although he was able to continue, also lost positions. And Piastri, despite continuing on the track, saw his career mortgaged at that moment. The commissioners did not take long to act. Penalty of 10 seconds and 2 points on the super license. A blunt ruling that McLaren, despite its disagreement, did not appeal. This is where the controversy rises to a new level. According to the official steward's report, Piastri's overtaking was illegal because he did not reach the required overlap before the apex. That is to say, its front wheel was not aligned with the mirror of Antonelli's car, as stipulated by the most recent FIA guidelines. A literal reading of the regulations. But many inside the paddock and outside it disagreed. Andrea Stella, McLaren team director, was one of the first to speak out. He described the penalty as excessive and stated that Antonelli, knowing Piastri was there, could have left more space. He suggested it was an avoidable collision. But the most shocking thing came from an unexpected place. Charles Leclerc himself, a direct victim of the accident, publicly defended Piastri. In his words, "Kimi and Oscar share responsibility. It was not a unilateral mistake." That statement, in a sport where drivers often remain silent when they are harmed, was a blow to the official narrative. The situation became even more complex when new visual analyses were leaked. Slow-motion images from Piastri's T-cam and Antonelli's car showed that there was a partial overlap at the time of braking. Not complete, but not non-existent either. And even more, Antonelli's steering angle indicated that he was turning inwards with no room for correction, despite the visible presence of the McLaren. Leclerc, who came from the outside, had also left little room. It was a 3-car maneuver on a curve designed for 2. An inevitable funnel. Experts including Jolyon Palmer and Sky Sports technical commentators called the penalty disproportionate, arguing that the FIA was applying the rules rigidly without considering the context. And that is the key point: context. The overtaking was bold but not reckless. It was a championship maneuver from a driver who knows he needs points. What for some was recklessness, for others was determination. But what really divides opinions is the perception that if the maneuver had been executed by another pilot with greater political weight or media support, the verdict could have been different. This episode highlighted not only the diffuse limits of the regulations, but also the perception of unequal treatment between pilots. In the corridors of the paddock, there was talk of favoritism, political decisions, and the urgent need to review the overtaking guidelines. Because in its desire to impose clarity, the FIA could be condemning the art of overtaking to the cold calculation of a legal template, stripping the sport of the essence of its wheel-to-wheel competition. And while the debate grew, McLaren remained silent. At least officially. But within the team, the crack was already open. Because what was at stake was not just a race, but the confidence of a driver who felt that his team was not defending him. What happened in Brazil did not end with the checkered flag. For McLaren, it was the beginning of an internal crisis that is still far from being resolved. What began as a series of questionable decisions in the race quickly transformed into a structural conflict that is compromising the competitive integrity of the team. At the center of it all, two names: Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri. Both are young, fast, intelligent, and with long-term contracts. But there is a fundamental difference: the power that each person holds within the organization. Norris has been at McLaren since 2019. He is the face of the team's modern project. His bond with the engineer Will Joseph, his accumulated experience, his closeness with the technical managers, all this has given him a privileged position within Woking. He is not only a pilot, he is a symbol. And that gives him influence both on the track and off it. Piastri, for his part, arrived with a different profile. Less media-oriented, more analytical, supported by his former mentor Mark Webber. His talent is indisputable, but his place in the internal structure is still fragile. The choice of Tom Stallard as his race engineer seems strategic. Someone with Olympic experience, methodical, with a low profile, ideal for building a relationship of technical trust. But what happened in Brazil showed that this relationship is not being protected as it should. The leak of internal images of the team, allegedly carried out by Piastri's technical entourage, was more than a silent protest. It was a cry for help. A desperate way to expose a narrative that McLaren was unwilling to share publicly. Instead of openly defending its driver after the penalty, the team opted for a diplomatic position, closer to silence than unconditional support. This caused a chain reaction. Within the engineering team, tensions arose between the two technical factions. Those who support Will Joseph's management and those who feel that Stallard has been sidelined in key decisions. According to sources close to the paddock, there were internal discussions about what data was shared with the FIA, and why some analyses favorable to Piastri were not included in the team's official report after the incident. In addition, there was talk of differences in the setups prior to the Brazilian GP. Although officially both cars used similar configurations, cross-referencing suggests that Piastri received a different version of the acceleration map in low-grip sectors, which could have influenced both Saturday's accident and the lack of response to Sunday's contact. None of these versions has been confirmed by McLaren, but the leak of these details fuels the perception of technical inequality. At the same time, the British press has been noticeably more favorable to Norris, interpreting his leadership in the championship as proof that McLaren is betting on him as its first driver. This narrative, reinforced by ambiguous statements from Andrea Stella, leaves Piastri in an uncomfortable position, forced to prove his worth on the track while facing a battle of perception off it. And this is where the tension becomes strategic. Because a team that aspires to the title cannot afford an internal war. Modern Formula One requires absolute synergy between its two drivers to maximize points in the Constructors' Championship. What McLaren is experiencing is a direct threat to that logic. If Piastri's environment perceives that there is favoritism, the consequence will not only be a loss of individual performance, but a progressive erosion of team cohesion. The management of this crisis will mark the future of McLaren. In other times, teams like Ferrari, Red Bull, or Mercedes face similar problems among high-level teammates. Some resolved them with strong leadership. Others ended up broken from within. Right now, McLaren is at a crossroads. He has the fastest car on the grid. It has two drivers with the talent to be champions. But if you don't resolve the internal rift, you could lose everything. Because in Formula One, politics weigh as much as the stopwatch. And today in Woking, the clocks are ticking, in more ways than one. What happened in Brazil was more than a racing accident. It was a mirror that reflected the tensions, fractures, and ethical dilemmas that cross modern Formula One. A sport where millimeter precision coexists with human decisions, where each maneuver on the track can hide years of politics, power, and complex relationships between driver, engineer, and team. Oscar Piastri didn't just lose points. He lost something even more delicate, the feeling that his team supports him unconditionally. And in a sport where trust between driver and engineer is as vital as car setup, that rift can be devastating. Because the real problem was not the blockage in turn 1, nor the 10-second penalty. The real blow was the subsequent silence, the ambiguity of the team, the lack of clear support at a time when the pilot was most exposed. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.